Begin by asking those in attendance and those participating virtually to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I want to emphasize, I want to thank you all for being here today in this hearing of the Veterans and Federal Affairs Committee. The important work of this committee today with this hearing, where we'll be hearing testimony on 11 House bills and 8 Senate bills. These bills are on a number of different issues related to federal and overseas legislation. I'd like to recognize the members, my members that are here on the committee, Representative Thurber, Representative Gasky, and Representative Arriaga. Thank you for being here. And you'll see, again, committee members in and out. And I got Rep. DeRosa, thank you for being here. And now I'll turn it over to my Senate co-chair, Senator Mike Rush, for some opening remarks and to recognize the Senate committee members who are with us.
Thank you, Chairman McGonigal. I'm Senator Mike Rush, Vice Chair of the committee. I'm so glad to be here today while Chair Vilas attends his obligation with the Massachusetts National Guard. So hearing gets underway. I'd like to recognize and name the other Senate members of the committee. Senator and Chairman John Vilas, Senator Collins, Senator Brady, Senator Montigny, and Senator Fatman. We're dealing with some important topics in this hearing today, with 8 Senate bills and 11 House bills that focus on federal and overseas legislation. These matters remind us how closely the committee's work is tied to what happened beyond our state borders, whether it's ensuring that our veterans receive the benefits they're earned through federal law, strengthening Massachusetts partnerships with our allies abroad, or examining how national developments impact our local communities. This committee plays a key role in connecting the state and federal spheres, as I'm grateful that we're giving these pieces of legislation the due diligence they deserve today. The testimony we'll hear help us better understand how many of these matters affect the people of Massachusetts. Our goal is to make sure that this committee, as we state policy, remains responsive and forward-looking. Thank you all for your continued participation and advocacy. I'd now like to turn it back over to Chairman McGonigal to introduce the first testifier.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Rush. Just a few housekeeping details before we get started. This is a hybrid hearing with participation both in person and virtually. This hearing is being publicly live streamed and archived on the official website of the General Court. Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes per person. I believe there's over 40 people here to testify, so we'd be grateful if you could abide by that at the discretion of the chairs. It is the responsibility of the individuals registered to testify be prepared to speak when called upon by the chairs. And as is customary, the committee may take elected officials out of turn to testify. If you are here today and did not pre-register for testimony, you may sign up to speak on forms provided by the committee staff outside of the hearing room. When all pre-registered individuals have been called to testify, the chairs will then call any individuals who have signed up today. Written testimony will also continue to be accepted by the committee until bills are acted upon and can be submitted via email. Please note that the Senate bills considered during this hearing must be reported on by December 3rd of 2025, and House bills considered during this hearing must be reported on by January 13th, 2026, subject to any possible extensions. For committee members who may be participating virtually in this meeting, please use the raise hand tool on Teams or message in the chat if you would like to ask a question. And without further ado, I'd like to now recognize our first testifier. Representative Vice and Senator Cream, would you like to come forward? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair McGonigal and Vice Chair Rush. I think you went to take a vote.
Yep.
For taking us out of Turin. We're here today. I'm alongside Representative Alice Peisch to testify in support of House 4692 and Senate 284, our joint resolution to rescind all prior Article 5 resolutions. This resolution that you have before you would rescind all prior Article 5 resolutions from Massachusetts, requesting Congress to convene a constitutional convention at the federal level. An Article 5 convention is a process outlined in the U.S. Constitution that allows states to call for a constitutional convention if 2/3, or known as 34, of state legislators call for one. One critical article of Article 5 convention is that there are no clear guidelines on how this convention should be conducted, meaning there's no rules on what scope of issues should be up for discussion, how delegates would be selected, or even how special influence would be curtailed. For this reason, a constitutional convention would open the entire U.S. Constitution to unpredictable changes, including rights that we all hold dear, particularly here in Massachusetts. Without safeguards, any constitutional issues potentially would be brought to the table, such as reproductive rights, marriage equality, civil rights and liberties, voting rights, and other private rights. When an Article 5 convention has never been called before in American history, but there's some recent conservative momentum. In February of 2022, in the case of McCall versus Pelosi, it was filed in the U.S. District Court, and they claimed that enough states have passed resolutions for the convention. We were one of those that they consider. That case was dismissed, citing that it was a political question, but it was not dismissed on the merits. It was dismissed on the basis of who filed it. Significantly, this lawsuit featured Massachusetts resolutions in their count, including a 1977 resolution to ban abortion, and a 1931 resolution attempting to overturn prohibition. These outdated resolutions from Massachusetts are still active. They should be rescinded. We would not be the first state to take this step. There are 16 states currently at 0 resolutions. More states have done rescissions, but have since passed new resolutions which are considered active. Through this effort, we will ensure that the conservative activists pushing for an Article 5 convention will not be able to utilize outdated resolutions from Massachusetts to contribute to that count. If we are successful, Massachusetts would be a pivotal number 17, putting the country way below the 34 required. Rescinding our prior Article 5 resolutions will send a clear message to the Trump administration and other special interest groups that will be strong defenders of our constitutional rights and of our democracy. Thank you for taking me out of turn. I pass the torch to my
Thank you, Senator.
colleague. And I want to say this has been a wonderful opportunity for the two of us to work together on this. This resolution is the exact same resolution filed in both the House and the Senate, and it's great that we are working collaboratively in this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cream, and thank you, Chairman McGonigal and Senator Rush in absentia, I guess, while he
You know the
votes.
business here,
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Representative.
Again, I repeat much of what Senator Cream said, but I certainly appreciate your willingness to take us out of turn, particularly since the the Senate is in session. I have very little to add to what Senator Cream has laid out. I just would like to indicate, for the record, that I'm here in support of Senate 284 and House 4692, and I would like to emphasize that what these resolutions do is simply rescind outstanding, outdated resolutions calling for a calling upon Congress to call a constitutional convention for purposes of amending the United States Constitution. This is not related to amending the Massachusetts Constitution. And I would like to point out that it has been decades since these resolutions were passed, and I believe it is just simply an oversight that they have not been rescinded. But as Senator Cream has said, the fact that they are outstanding leaves open the possibility, however remote, that Massachusetts could be used to meet that pivotal requirement of 34 states based on these very outdated and long, resolutions that were passed and forwarded to the United States Congress, as I said, decades ago. So I thank you for your attention, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, but certainly think that this is a very straightforward, common sense action for the Commonwealth to take.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah. Excuse with the customary thanks. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And I want to welcome Senator Fatman, Representative Kearney, and my vice chair, Representative Turco. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Next, we have Representative Howard. Good afternoon, Representative.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Chairman McGonigal, Vice Chair Senator Lusch, and the esteemed members of the committee, thank you so much for taking me out of turn. I am here before you to testify in support of H3851, resolutions condemning political oppression and encouraging free and fair elections in Cambodia. It has been 34 years since the Paris Peace Agreement was signed in 1991 to end decades of conflict in Cambodia. The PPA is a 19-nation international agreement sought to resolve political conflict and turmoil in Cambodia by setting forth the right to self-determination of its people through free and fair elections. Significant expenditures in the reform of international aid have been made to promote a pluralistic, multi-party, democratic system in Cambodia. However, freedom of expression, assembly, and association are severely restricted through political detention, intimidation, and control over the judiciary. The opposition is marginalized by legal and political pressure, while human rights defenders and journalists face harassment, arrest, and imprisonment for criticizing the government. Various bipartisan international bodies and legislative assemblies have passed or proposed resolution and legislation condemning political oppression and encouraging free and fair elections in Cambodia, particularly following the widely criticized elections in 2023. These initiatives highlight concerns over the ruling party's consolidation of power and the shrinking of civic space. The international community, including the United States and European Union and the United Nations, has repeatedly issued resolutions, statements, and reports condemning political oppression and the lack of free and fair elections in Cambodia. The resolution also emphasizes the United States' responsibility to prevent the undermining of democracy globally and recognizes the significant Cambodian American population right here in Massachusetts, many of whom fled political persecution. This issue has widespread support in the city of Lowell. The city council passed the resolution, my home district, where we have the second largest Cambodians and has bipartisan support nationally. This resolution would simply send a message to our federal partners and our constituents, particularly those of Cambodian American descent, that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts stands with them in opposition to political oppression and joins in the hope for free and fair elections to finally arrive in Cambodia as was promised back in 1991. The Paris Peace Agreement remains a crucial legal and moral benchmark for a pluralistic, liberal, democratic order and human rights protection in Cambodia. I urge the committee to report the bill out favorably, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Representative Howard. Thank you for your
Thank
passion
you.
with this
Thank you.
issue. Are there any questions, any of the members? Excuse the customary thanks.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank Representative Rios. Thank you for being here. She just walked in. We have Rep. Hong here. Good afternoon, Representative.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking me out of term and giving me the opportunity to testify in my testimony. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, the esteemed committee of Joint Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in strong support of House Resolution 83H51, a resolution condemning political oppression and encouraging free and fair election in Cambodia. As a state representative for the 18 Middlesex District in Lowell, I'm proud to represent the second largest Cambodian population in the country. This community have made extraordinary contribution to our city and the Commonwealth. Many Cambodian families in Lowell came here as refugees after surviving the Khmer Rouge regime, one of the most brutal and tragic periods in history. They rebuilt their life in Lowell, bringing with them resilience, hope, and deep belief in the promise of democracy. However, since that time, Cambodia have never truly experienced a free and fair election. Opposition party continue to face persecution, independent media is restricted, and citizens who speak out for democracy risk intimidation or imprisonment. As a Cambodian American myself, I take this issue very personal. My own story and the story of my constituents are tied to the struggle of freedom and justice. I will continue to stand up and demand democracy as well as free and fair election in Cambodia. This is not only about international politics, it is about dignity and future of the people who still believe in the same democratic value that define Massachusetts and the United States of America. Passing H3851 is an act of solidarity. It sends a clear message that Massachusetts stands with the Cambodian people in their ongoing fight for democracy, human rights, and self-discrimination. It also tells the Cambodian American community here in Lowell and in the state that their experience and their voice matter, and the state government stand with them. I respectfully urge the committee to report this resolution favorably and allow Massachusetts to once again lead with moral, clearly, and compassion. Thank you for your time and for standing with those who continue to fight for democracy and around the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Excuse the customary thanks.
Thank you.
Representative Gentile, you ready to testify?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chair McGonigal. I don't see Chair Ellis.
deployed right now. Representative.
what's that?
He's on a deployment, but we have
Is that right?
Senator Mike Rush. And
Oh,
again,
Senator
everybody,
Rush?
you know, so you realize that you got reps running in and out, senators.
That's right.
you know.
That's
There's a lot of committee hearings.
A lot of hearings today. I have 7 bills today, so
Okay.
5 here. Thank you for taking me out of turn. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and for your continued work on behalf of the Commonwealth's veterans and our shared democratic values. I'm here to express my strong support for and respectfully request favorable support for several of my bills before the committee. House 3843, resolutions for an application to Congress for an amendment overturning Citizens United. House 3844 and Senate 2472, resolutions proclaiming that the Commonwealth of Mass supports admitting Washington, D.C. into the Union as a state. House 3845, resolutions ratifying the proposed amendment to the Constitution of the United States for federal regulation of child labor. It's been before us for 100 years now. House 3846 and Senate 2464, an act to continue the Citizens Commission concerning a constitutional amendment to secure government of the people. Let me begin with House 3844, which would add Massachusetts' voice to the growing national movement for D.C. statehood. Over half of U.S. states and territories have considered resolutions of support since 2021. D.C.'s 700,000 residents pay federal taxes, they serve in the military, and they fulfill all the responsibilities of citizenship, yet they remain without voting representation in Congress. This legislation would place the moral weight of our legislature behind the effort for D.C. statehood. House 3845 would have Massachusetts ratify the long-pending child labor amendment, which Congress passed in 1924 to give the federal government explicit authority to regulate child labor. Though 28 states ratified it at the time, it fell short of the required threshold and, importantly, has no ratification deadline. Though the 27th Amendment took more than 200 years to be ratified, this one, just over 100 years old, remains viable today. Though given recent shifts in judicial interpretation and the fragility of long-held precedents, it's timely and prudent to reaffirm our state's support for protecting children from exploitation. Next, House 3846 and Senate 2464 would extend the work of the Citizens Commission created by voters in 2018 through question number 2, which passed with over 71% support. The commission was charged with examining how to overturn Citizens United and curb the corrosive influence of money in politics. Having served on the commission, I witnessed firsthand the thoughtfulness of its work and the seriousness of its charge. These bills would make essential technical updates, most importantly, allowing vacancies to be filled so that the commission can continue its critical mission. Finally, I want to address House 3842, House 3843, both concerning the Citizens United decision. While I've long filed legislation calling for an Article 5 convention, I recognize that this committee may have some hesitation at advancing this idea right now. Under the current presidential administration, under the current administration, I also support House 4692, filed by Leader Peisch, to rescind previous Article 5 applications. Therefore, I'd encourage the committee to focus on House 3843, which advances the same goal, overturning Citizens United without making a new Article 5 application. This approach, also recommended by the Citizens Commission, provides a prudent and effective way for Massachusetts to lead on campaign finance reform. Thank you again for your time, attention, and commitment to strengthening democracy in the Commonwealth and across the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Excuse the customary thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have a rather large panel on the Convention of States. Everybody's here for that? Okay, so you want to come up 3 at a time? Is that okay, so you can sit comfortably? So we'll have Mike Arnold, Jessica Burchin, and Barbara Brenton.
Chairman McGonigal,
Good afternoon.
honorable members of the committee, thank you very much for hearing us today. My name is Michael Arnold of the 2nd Barnstable District. Kip Page is my representative. Today, we bring before you a request both simple in its ask and monumentally profound in its promise, an opportunity to shape the future of our Commonwealth and our country. We stand before you in a remarkable place steeped in the legacy of bold ideas and decisive action in support of H. 3888, a resolution that calls us to reaffirm a proud tradition, your tradition, of leadership and marked by wisdom and courage. This tradition has defined this august body for centuries. Today we honor the foresight of patriots like John Adams, John Hancock, and Daniel Webster, visionaries whose courage and wisdom wove the fabric of this nation. As we stand here in the birthplace of American democracy, we are summoned not just to remember their legacy, but to carry it forward, to actively shape the future. They are remembered because they dared to lead where others hesitated. Without their individual and collective courage, we might all be driving on the wrong side of the road right now. When President-elect John F. Kennedy addressed this very body, he quoted Pericles saying, quote, "We do not imitate, for we are a model to others," unquote. Indeed, this is the birthplace of America, the grand experiment in democracy. Our founders knew better than anyone the fragility of republics and the immense challenge of self-governance. They understood that maintaining a democracy requires vigilance, commitment, and ongoing effort. That sacred work continues today, no less vital now than at the dawn of our great nation. Thank you, committee, for hearing my testimony.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of H. 3888. My name is Jessica Burchin. I'm a resident of West Springfield. No one should ever take for granted the weighty legislation born from the dedication of our elected representatives. The famous names on statues, as well as those who labored in relative obscurity, we honor them today by recalling just a few of their landmark achievements. First, the Massachusetts Body of Liberties, created in 1641, long before the idea of the United States existed. This groundbreaking legal code laid the foundation for American civil rights. Next, the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780, authored by John Adams and his colleagues, the oldest written constitution still in continuous effect anywhere in the world. It was more than a state document. It was the very first blueprint for our U.S. Constitution. And in more recent times, under Governor Mitt Romney, Massachusetts passed a landmark health reform law in 2006, one that became the model for the 2010 Affordable Care Act. Massachusetts consistently ranks among the nation's leaders in healthcare, education, and innovation. Our government has been a beacon of thoughtful policy and effective governance for nearly 4 centuries. These milestones remind us that this institution has always been a place of visionary leadership. It is in the spirit of that enduring legacy that we come to you now with a fervent request to act with equal wisdom, courage, and gravity. From the remarkable history we inherit, let us now turn boldly to the present and to the future. Thank you again for letting me have testimony here in support of H. 3888, and I ask respectfully for your favorable vote on this legislation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen on the committee. My name is Barbara Brenton, and I'm from the little town of Halifax, incorporated 1734. And at that time, the Native American name given was Monpont, which has great significance today in that town. I thank you for the opportunity to give testimony in support of H. 3888 regarding the Convention of States. The resolution before you, H. 3888, is more than legislation. It's an urgent call to reaffirm Massachusetts' proud role in defending self-government. By any measure, a growing majority of Americans believe our republic is in grave danger. drifting far from its founding principles and increasingly disconnected from the Constitution that was created to unite us together. The federal government has not only abandoned its enumerated powers, but has also become ineffective and divided, as well as often and increasingly mean-spirited. This failure costs us dearly, wasted lives, trillions of dollars in debt, and the steady erosion of all of our liberties. It's no surprise then that trust in the federal leadership is at an all-time low. In October 2025, Gallup reported Congress's approval rating at a shocking 15%, with 79% disapproving of their performance, well below the historical average of 30%. To put this in perspective, Congress ranks just above used car salesmen and telemarketers in terms of public trust. Our elected officials fear far worse of the media, the Supreme Court, big corporations, and even Wall Street. This most pessimistic approval rating reflects a government that no longer governs for its people, but rules over them, an oligarchy abusing power while the nation fractures and suffers. Instead of safeguarding ordered liberty as the Constitution demands, too many in Washington act as rulers, not representatives. They see we the people not as citizens, but as subjects to be controlled. This is why H. 3888 matters, because the time to reclaim our republic before it slips beyond repair is right now. So I just want to thank you all for letting me give testimony on H. 3888, and I certainly hope your vote is in mighty favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the police superintendent? Excuse the customary thanks. Committee wants to welcome Representative Toski and Representative Duffy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair.
We have next John DiBattista. We have Kathy Dugan. Kathy here. And we have Brian Hemingway. Step right up.
Good afternoon, Chairman,
Good afternoon.
honorable members. My name is John DiBattista. I'm a lifelong resident of the Merrimack Valley. From the depths of that dismal 15% congressional approval rating, there is hope. Across this nation, in growing and determined numbers, we the people are ready to peacefully and lawfully reclaim our authority. This reclamation begins by using the brilliant constitutional mechanism designed by the founders, led by James Madison, to check federal overreach and restore balance. By supporting H. 3888, you do more than honor history. You make sure that we reclaim our constitutional rights and set a course for future generations. Already, more than 2.7 million patriots nationwide have signed the Convention of States Action Petition in support of our organization and its goals. To date, 19 states have committed to support an Article 5 convention. The momentum is real, and it is unstoppable. Article 5 of the Constitution gives us this powerful tool for change. We've had it all along. While Congress has historically proposed amendments, the states have equal power through an Article 5 convention to propose amendments. Amendments of critical importance, amendments that Congress will never consider. For example, amendments to limit federal power, amendments to demand fiscal responsibility, And finally, amendments to impose term limits on federal officials. These are not radical ideas. They reflect the will of the people. Fully 90% of Americans support term limits for Congress. This is our chance to reclaim the promise of self-government. Let us seize it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So good afternoon to Mr. Chairman and the honorable members of the committee. We'd like to thank you for taking your valuable time today to listen to us present H3 888. My name is Kathy Dugan. I am from Carver, Mass. I also feel like I'm from Rockland, Mass, as I spend a good deal of my time in an art studio in an old sandpaper factory in Rockland. And I'm very excited and nervous about presenting this today. So Article 5 is one of the more remarkable parts of our Constitution, a constant reminder of just how extraordinary this document truly is. The oldest written national constitution still in use today, a testament to the foresight and the wisdom of our founders. As President Woodrow Wilson once said, quote, "The Constitution was not made to fit us like a straitjacket. It was made to be adapted to the needs of a growing nation," end quote. More recently, the Honorable Ruth Bader Ginsburg reflected, quote, "The frame is new that society would evolve. The genius of the Constitution is that it can evolve with society," end quote. But that evolution depends on the inspired actions of this august body by supporting H3 888. We believe that calling an Article 5 convention to consider timely and judicious amendments is not just wise, it is essential at this pivotal moment in our republic's life. Amending the Constitution is no light matter, and it should never be so. Since 1778, more than 11,000 amendments have been proposed in Congress. Of course, only 33 were ultimately sent to the states for ratification. And as you know well, only 27 have been ratified to become a part of the Constitution. That's a batting average of 0.002. But none of these very slim odds melt away when 90% of Americans support the cause. As Justice Brennan reminded us, quote, "The genius of the Constitution rests not in any static meaning it might have had in a world that is dead and gone, but in the adaptability of its great principles to cope with current problems and current needs," end quote. This nearly perfect 237-year-old document stands ready for careful, thoughtful consideration, and ready for renewal. The only question left is, when should it evolve? And the answer is also perfectly clear. The answer is now. And I thank you for hearing us out on H3 888, and I hope that when we finish today, you will be as excited to support it as we are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of this committee. My name is Brian Hemingway of America's hometown, Plymouth, Massachusetts. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of H3 3888. Before we dive into the compelling reasons for supporting an Article 5 convention, let's take a moment to review how this process works. It's elegantly simple, and many of you are familiar with it. Article 5 of the Constitution provides two methods to amend this foundational document. First, Congress can propose an amendment if 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate agree to do so. That proposed amendment then goes to the states for ratification. For it to become law, at least 3/4 of the 38 states must approve. Each state has one vote. This is the process used for all 27 amendments to date. But there's a second path, just as valid, just as effective. The states themselves can call for a convention to propose and discuss amendments. When 2/3 of the states, that's 34, apply to Congress to call a convention, Congress is required to do so. The convention would debate and finalize the proposed amendments. which then return to the states for ratification. Just as before, 38 states must approve a proposed amendment for it to become part of the Constitution. Importantly, these state applications must clearly specify the purpose of the convention, thus carefully defining its scope and preventing a so-called runaway. And these applications must be consistent or harmonized across states to present a unified petition. While we are pleased to note that there are other groups promoting an Article 5 convention, only our organization, Convention of States Action, stands apart in that our resolution is the only one with the necessary consistency across every state that has adopted or will adopt it. This ensures a focused, effective, and successful process. Legal scholars widely agree that such a convention's scope is strictly limited to the topics specified in the applications. For example, if the call is for a balanced budget amendment, that would be the sole subject addressed. History also supports our confidence. Over the centuries, various states have held roughly 233 constitutional conventions of their own. Not one has ever been deemed a runaway. Similarly, there have been 42 historical interstate conventions, many of them including the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Each and every one of these conventions has been an orderly forum that effectively addressed a wide range of critical governance issues. So, with clear rules, historical precedent, and a unified approach, the Article 5 convention mechanism stands as a constitutional, practical, and powerful tool to make the necessary changes to restore balance to our federal system. Again, thank you very much for your valuable time today, and I ask that you please vote in favor of H 3888.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Yes.
just a couple of observations, comments, that I have another hearing that I have to run out to, so I'll miss a lot of the testimony, but I just wanted to throw this out at you. We did do one of these as a nation before, correct? When we had the Articles of Confederation. And the Articles of Confederation expressly stated that no amendment to the Articles could be done unless it was unanimously approved by the states, had to be approved by a convention. And what happened? They went to Philadelphia and they created the U.S. Constitution, which went far beyond anything that was expected to happen. That is in essence the concern that some people, despite sort of the repeated statements, this wouldn't be a runaway, there is a concern as to what happens once you get into a convention. And language that talks about impose fiscal restraint on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. I'm not sure how much more broad you could write a sentence than limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. And then with respect to term limits, just an interesting observation. By my count, 71% of the members of the United States House of Representatives have served less than 12 years. 71% of them as of today. 310 members have served less than 12. Most of the term limit numbers I've always heard is people should serve 6 terms. So 310 of 435 have served less than that. 54 members of the U.S. Senate have served 2 terms or less. So the people through the election process have already sort of addressed, despite saying that we support term limits, 90% I think was the number you quoted. I think the reality is most people say we don't like our members of Congress. Well, we don't like Congress, but we like our member. We don't like our state rep or our state senator, but we don't like the state legislature. There's not transparency and all this good stuff, but we like Joe McGonigal because he's my rep. We like Jeff Turco because he's my rep. So I'm torn. I tend to be on sort of ideologically right of center, and I can see a constitutional convention where the late Senator John Chafee from Rhode Island, every session proposed a constitutional amendment to restrict the Second Amendment to say handguns are banned in the United States of America. Is that something that deals with the power and jurisdiction of the federal government? Because the very first law passed by the Congress of the United States was the Militia Act. The Militia Act defined the militia as all able-bodied males 15 to 55 are members of the militia, the unorganized militia, and shall present themselves. Most New England towns required residents or able-bodied males to show up on the town green once a year under penalty of being fined if you didn't show up with a weapon. And so I just question whether, this broad language, to me, you call it limited, to me, it's very broad language that says, could the late Senator Chafee's amendment to the Second Amendment go before the convention? Because that deals with limiting the power of the federal government vis-a-vis the militia. So I'm torn on the whole topic. I think of my colleague, my dear friend and colleague that testified earlier, Representative Gentili, about his proposed resolutions regarding amendment. Citizens United. I happen to think the more late the better. Spend as much money as you want, as long as there's full disclosure as to who's spending the money, so that people can make an educated decision as to who to vote for and whether they're being bought or paid for. But could Representative Gentili's proposal or proposals regarding late child labor laws, regarding, there's a whole host of amendments that are proposed right now in this legislature. So I think we as a committee need to think broadly about what kind of Pandora's box do we open up, and is there truly a way to limit the convention? Because the wise men and women that, frankly, wise men that said we need to create a convention to reform the Articles of Confederation certainly did not anticipate what ultimately happened, though we clearly benefit from the runaway convention in Philadelphia. So I'm sorry for speaking a little too long, but I just wanted to get a few things out before I have to run to TUE, and I'm happy to, if anyone has any thoughts on that, I'm happy to talk to you offline afterwards. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Customary thanks. Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to acknowledge that Senator from New Bedford, Senator Montigny, has joined us remotely. He's online. He's with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Senator. We now have Pete Hunt, Jane Laborde, and Mark Marshall. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Pete Hunt. I'm from Sonnet, and I'm amazingly proud to be able to present this to your committee, and I appreciate you hearing it.
Welcome to the State House.
Our vision of Article 5 Convention is clear. The states should come together, propose amendments that limit the power and reach of the federal government, impose fiscal restraints, and establish term limits for federal officials. Let's begin with the most straightforward and widely supported goal, term limits. Despite our nation's current deep divisions, nearly 90% actually agree on one thing. We desperately need term limits for those elected or appointed to federal office. The founders intended the public service to be a temporary duty, an honorable calling to serve the country for a term or two and then return to everyday life and work. But what do we see now? Career politicians entrenched in Washington for decades. Senators like Byrd, Inouye, Leahy, Thurman, and Ted Kennedy each served nearly half a century or more. Representatives Dingell, Whitten, Conyers, Benson, and Keller also overstayed just as long. We all know the saying about guests who stay too long and how they begin to smell. That most unpleasant odor is the unmistakable stench of corruption, complacency, detachment from the people, cozy relationships with special interests, and careerism, resulting in the policy gridlock that stifles progress every single day in D.C. Term limits aren't just a good idea, they are clearly a necessity. And here's the harsh truth. Congress will never impose term limits on itself. It would take heroic humility and self-sacrifice to do so. Two qualities are in very short supply in the halls of D.C. Sure, many politicians claim to serve the public good, but when it potentially means walking away from decades of power, privilege, and perks, the math just doesn't add up. If term limits are ever going to happen, it will be because we the people demand it through an Article 5 convention. This is a concept with overwhelming support, 90% approval from the American people, and that is exactly why the Article 5 convention is urgently needed. Thank you for hearing my testimony, and I ask for your vote in favor of H 3888.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Jane LaVorde. I'm from Granby, Mass. I'm Western Massachusetts. Thank you for allowing me to testify today in support of H 3388. Beyond term limits, what keeps Americans awake at night? In 1992, political strategist James Carville famously said, quote, "It's the economy, stupid," unquote. With those 4 words, Bill Clinton defeated the sitting president, a rare feat, happening only 9 times in 204 years. Today, according to the Gallup poll, the economy and inflation remain the top concern of Americans, far above immigration, health care, drug addiction, or mental health. Americans want fiscal responsibility. They want the government to manage money as responsible as their own finances. Is this so hard to grasp? Unfortunately, the answer appears to be yes. In the past 50 years, the federal government has shut down 21 times due to budget impasses. Before 1980, the shutdowns were often symbolic. Agencies stayed open. After 1980, legal rulings made shutdowns real. Employees were furloughed. Services stopped. Until recently, the longest shutdown lasted 35 days, beginning December 22nd, 2018. Each shutdown was triggered by political stalemate. Is it any wonder why voters feel ignored by the government that can't govern? As of this week, the U.S. national debt stands at a staggering $38 trillion. The ratio of debt to the GDP is now over 100%. And it keeps climbing, driven by persistent deficits, rising interest payments. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office projects federal debt held by public will rise from more than 100% of the GDP today to 118% by 2035. According to Cato Institute, the U.S. faces roughly $78 trillion net present value in unfunded obligations attributable to the federal government's non-interest spending beyond projected receipts. Of that sum, about $75.9 trillion, approximately 95%, is driven by just 2 programs, Social Security and Medicare. In fiscal year 2025 alone, the U.S. is expected to pay $952 billion just in interest on the debt, money that reduces the deficit by exactly 0. I'm going to let those numbers sink in. In conclusion, our country is being destroyed. All of you and I share a responsibility to uphold and protect the U.S. Constitution. You, as state congressmen, and I, as a retired Air National Guardsman, we need to uphold our Constitution by our oath by approving H 3888. If you don't, who will? Thank you again for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Mark Marshall from Middleborough, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity today to speak on behalf favorably of H 3888, a resolution calling for a convention of states. As the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett once said, quote, "I could end the deficit in 5 minutes. You just pass a law that says anytime there is a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election," unquote. That's actually a brilliant idea. It potentially solves two problems at once: fiscal responsibility and term limits. In fact, a July 2023 poll cited in a September 2023 House committee hearing found that 80% of voters support a constitutional amendment requiring a balanced budget within 10 years. Meanwhile, a recent Cato Institute survey shows that 64% of Americans prefer cutting spending as the way to balance the budget. Term limits and fiscal responsibility, these are two compelling reasons to support an Article 5 convention. And there's a third. The United States was founded on the principle of limited government, where, with few exceptions, power rests with the people and their states. This is the very essence of a republic. Yet, over the decades, the federal government's reach has ballooned beyond what the founders envisioned. Excessive regulations, unsustainable spending, and incursions on state sovereignty have become all too common. The 10th Amendment clearly states, quote, "Powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states or the people," unquote, also known as the Supremacy Clause. But in the last century, through judicial rulings, legislation, and executive actions, federal authority has grown far beyond those limits. Members of this august committee, it's time to reclaim our republic. Thank you again for offering me this opportunity to speak in favor, and I ask that you vote it favorably out of Committee H 3888. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Excuse the customary thanks. If we could I, we have somebody that's waiting on. David Super. He's testifying. He's going to testify virtually. David, are you here?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Good
you very
afternoon.
much. Thank you very much, Chairman McGonigal, Senator Rush, and members of the committee for allowing me to testify. I'm here in support of H 4692 and Senate 284 that would remove the old, outdated applications for a constitutional convention from the books. The general court ought to speak for Massachusetts. Unfortunately, other people around the country are using these old resolutions, old applications, to misrepresent what Massachusetts wants, and I would respectfully submit that you and your colleagues should say what Massachusetts wants. At a time of great national division, we should hold on to that which unites us, and our Constitution is very much, along with our flag, that which unites us. A Article 5 convention risks all of that and threatens to take away our Constitution and replace it with a one-sided document controlled by special interests. The nation, honestly, is evenly divided right now between left and right, with a number of Americans in the middle, but a convention would be completely controlled by the right. 29 of the 50 delegations would be controlled entirely by Republicans. The result would be a constitutional convention that, rather than meeting us in the way, finding compromises, would be completely controlled by them. There are no restrictions on special interest spending and influence on such a convention. There are no rules and there are no limits. At one time, the advocates stated without any legal support that the convention be limited to the subjects on which it was called. Now that it's clear they can't get 34 states under those rules, we're seeing more and more people, including House Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington, saying let's add up all the convention applications for any purpose. This suggests that there'll be no limits whatsoever. We know how bad this can be because the group that just testified, the Convention of States Project, held a mock convention, a model convention, 2 years ago. Its proposals ended up gutting civil rights and environmental laws that all of us hold important, and it also was a runaway because it proposed capping the membership of the Supreme Court, even though that's not in any of their three purposes. The resolution offered by Representative Arrington on the federal level also implies that we would ratify by referendum rather than through the state legislatures. This is a dangerous gamble that we don't dare take at this time of division. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? Excuse customary thanks.
Thank you very much.
I'll resume back with the panel. I resume back with the Convention of States panel. I have Bill Matheson, Eric Machino, did I say that correct, and Debbie Myers. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair McGonigal and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Bill Matheson. I live in Billerica, home of the patriot Thomas Ditson, the actual real and Yankee Doodle, and the town from which 114 patriots marched to Concord to welcome the British Army on April 19, 1775. It's my great pleasure to continue supporting this continuing endeavor by doing my part in exercising our responsibilities under Article 5 to strengthen our Constitution by testifying here today in support of H. 3888. So when did this ravenous federal power grab begin? A major turning point came during the New Deal era, a desperate response to the Great Depression. After the 1929 Wall Street crash, coupled with the devastating Dust Bowl that crippled America's breadbasket, the federal government seized the moment. Yes, the states were reeling, but DC was not going to let a good crisis go to waste. The feds took unprecedented control over economic and social policies, setting the stage for massive intervention in what had been and should be state and local affairs. Then came the Great Society programs of the 1960s, further cementing federal dominance in education, healthcare, and welfare, again, areas traditionally managed by the states. More recently, federal agencies have issued thousands of regulations affecting businesses, individuals, state governments, and alike. This bureaucratic overreach has made it increasingly difficult for local communities to govern themselves according to their unique needs and values. Without a constitutional amendment to stop this runaway growth, the federal government will continue to expand unchecked, eroding states' rights and personal freedoms. Putting the brakes on this runaway government remains a top priority for most Americans. A constitutional amendment is the only way to restore the balance of power envisioned by the architects of our ongoing experiment in democracy. Thank you for your attention to these ideals set forth by the enormously talented founders and framers. I ask that you follow in that great tradition and demonstrate that Massachusetts legislators in 2025 are every bit as committed to self-governance by supporting H. 3888 and use the Constitution to save the Constitution.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of this joint committee. The correct pronunciation is Moschino.
I tried, all right? Mr. Moschino, I tried.
So, my name is Eric Moschino. I'm
Thank you for being here.
A resident of Plymouth, and I'm here to testify on H3888. As we've discussed, federal overreach often results in policies that restrict our freedoms. Excessive regulations stifle small businesses, like my own, choke innovation, and burden citizens with endless compliance. Reducing federal intervention means more personal and economic liberty for all Americans. A key problem is the lack of accountability. Bureaucrats and career politicians alike operate with little oversight, detached from the people they're intended to serve. Implementing term limits and stronger oversight of regulatory agencies
would ensure that government officials are answerable to we the people, not to entrenched interests or their own self-preservation. Decentralizing power back to the states and local governments lets communities craft policies that truly reflect their values and needs. State governments are closer to the people and better equipped to solve local problems than a distant federal bureaucracy. The unchecked expansion of federal power has thrown off the delicate balance our founders intended, undermining state sovereignty and diminishing individual freedoms. A constitutional amendment to curb this overreach offers a lasting solution. It would restore the proper balance of power, protect our liberties, promote fiscal responsibility, and ensure government accountability. An Article 5 convention could propose such an amendment, drawing a firm line around federal authority, preventing further encroachment and returning power where it belongs, to the states and to the people who live here. Thank you for your time. I ask that you support H388, pass it through out of committee favorably.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you like to use the microphone so they can hear you?
I'm pretty soft-spoken. Thank you, Senator Michael Lusch and Joseph McCockle and the committee for hearing us. I'm really grateful to be here today. I live in Acton. I'm a retired science middle school teacher. I really support H3888, and I'm here to explain why I support that bill. So I'll use my glasses. Amending the Constitution is no small task. It's meant to be difficult because what's at stake is the very foundation of our republic. But Article 5 offers the sovereign citizens, through their state legislatures, a clear constitutional path to restore a balanced, limited government. Think of Article 5 as break glass in case of emergency option for the states. And make no mistake about this, we are in that emergency. Advocates like us believe that an Article 5 convention is essential because there are goals that Congress, on its own, is highly unlikely to achieve. These goals are clear: restrain federal overreach and restore state sovereignty, impose fiscal responsibility, and enact term limits for federal officials. And here's the remarkable truth. Nearly 80% of Americans support fiscal responsibility, and 90% support term limits. And can you name any other policy with such overwhelming consensus? No, exactly. Yet despite this broad public support, many still raise concerns about legal uncertainties, runaway conventions, political gridlock, and practical challenges. Now my esteemed colleagues will address these concerns, debunk the myths, and show why this path is not only viable, but necessary. Thank you for hearing me out today, and our founding fathers demonstrated remarkable wisdom and foresight on the creation of our country and its Constitution. But there's a perfect way to conform to our changing needs, and it starts with your support of 3888. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Excuse me, customary thanks. The committee would like to welcome Senator Brady. Thank you, Senator, for being here. I'm sorry, Senator, the pride of Brockton is here. What about Everett, Senator? Next we have up, we've got Jeff Myers, Stephen Trebastone, Amy Troop, and let's bring up Dave Wilder. Fouriers. Could Fouriers manage? Need one more chair. If one speaks, then he can give up the chair?
Sure.
Okay, how's that? We're trying to accommodate everybody, you know what I mean? And who are we missing? We're missing one? Oh, okay. Thank you. Here's our court officer. God, he's good.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention today.
I'm Jeff Myers, also of Acton, a town that was founded in 1735, about to celebrate its 290th birthday. So there's a lot of proud history there. And frankly, I'm most humbled to be able to speak to you today in support of House 3888, a resolution calling for a convention of states, another opportunity to make proud history. You know, opponents of an Article 5 convention often raise concepts designed to instill fear in the general population and you. Let's address the two most common. Challenge number one is fear of a runaway convention. We've heard about that already several times today. The biggest myth is the so-called runaway convention, the idea that delegates of the convention would actually ignore their mandate and rewrite the Constitution. Detractors wrongly point to the Constitutional Convention of 1787, which we've already heard about, as an example, but context matters. The 1787 convention, led by George Washington, with the invaluable support of James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin, as well as Gouverneur Morris, was called to do one thing, and that is fix the Articles of Confederation, which they all felt was deeply flawed. There was no power to tax. There was no national court. There was no regulation of trade. And amendments would be required to have unanimous agreement among those states. The delegates to this were well aware that the system was broken and courageously created something far better, our Constitution. That's not a runaway. That's leadership. Today, we have a strong safeguards in place. States strictly define the scope of a potential convention through their resolutions. Delegates are bound to that scope. And again, no amendment takes effect unless 38 states approve. That's not easy, and it's not supposed to be. Now, here's the bottom line. There have been more than 230 state-level conventions to discuss constitutional changes. How many have gone rogue? 0. The notion of a runaway convention is, in fact, a scary ghost story meant to frighten you, not inform. Challenge number 2 is legal uncertainty. Critics falsely claim there is no legal precedent or clear process for an Article 5 convention. Well, it's true. The Constitution does not spell out every detail, such as how delegates are chosen or how the convention operates. But that's not a flaw. That's flexibility. The real safeguard is rock solid. No amendment becomes law unless 38 states ratify it, and that's an unsurmountable check against any radical ideas. History shows we can navigate uncharted territory. Bipartisan cooperation, legal oversight, and transparency have guided past conventions, and they'll do it again. We trust the Constitution. We trust the states, and with your help, we'll restore balance and accountability where it belongs, back to we the people. Thank you for your time and attention to our collective testimony. We hope this educates and inspires you to fully understand the compelling benefits of and the needs for an Article 5 convention, as this committee has done twice in the past. We commend the future to your good graces. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Stephen Tribblestone. I am a resident of Harwich, and I'm here to speak in favor of H 3888.
Good afternoon, Stephen.
Thank you. Let's talk plainly about two more common fears surrounding an Article 5 convention and why they shouldn't stop this powerful movement. Challenge number 3, political polarization and gridlock. The sad fact is, America is more divided than ever. Critics say a convention would just become another partisan war zone, but that's not how this works. An Article 5 convention is not a free-for-all. It demands broad, bipartisan support at every stage, from proposal to ratification. That means extreme ideas don't stand a chance. History proves it. 27 amendments have been ratified, often during turbulent times, because Americans came together around shared principles. And today, ideas like term limits, fiscal responsibility, and restoring balance between federal and state power are not fringe concepts. They're popular across party lines. In fact, An Article 5 convention could be the one place where Americans actually unite, not as Republicans or Democrats, but as citizens demanding better governance. But it won't happen unless we demand it. Challenge number 4, logistical roadblocks. Some worry the process is too complicated. Who picks the delegates? What are the rules? How do we organize it all? Those are valid questions, and we've answered them. There's real precedent for how states can structure conventions. Experts have laid out legal frameworks, and we've gone further by creating the 34 Ready program, a step-by-step guide to help states prepare responsibly, transparently, and constitutionally. It's a blueprint for success. We know because we've already held 2 mock conventions, and the results were a remarkable demonstration of democracy in action. I had the privilege of seeing it up close myself. You can explore it on our website, and while you're there, sign the petition. Show your fellow legislators that you support House Bill 3888 and that you believe it's time to act. Because the only thing more dangerous than division is doing nothing at all. I thank everyone here for hearing me out, and I hope that you all support 3888, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To everybody on the Joint Committee. My name's Amy Troop. I'm from Halifax, Massachusetts. I'm a realtor, I'm a yoga teacher, and I sit on the Halifax Planning Board. The challenge number 5 that we see in Convention Estate H3888 is federal resistance and legal pushback. It's my pleasure to review the last 2 challenges often raised about an Article 5 convention, and once again, to put those fears to rest. Some worry that Congress, the courts, or federal agencies will try to block a convention, afraid it might disrupt the status quo they benefit from. Let's be clear, the Constitution does not give Washington veto power over the state's rights to call a convention. That power belongs to us, we the people, through our states, and the Supreme Court has backed that up time and time again. Yes, we may face resistance from fringe groups or power holders in DC, but with millions of Americans standing up for the term limits and fiscal responsibility, that pressure is hard to ignore. And if legal challenges come, so be it. History shows that strong, well-organized efforts like this consistently prevail in court. This is not a loophole. It's a right. And we're ready to defend it. Challenge number 6, public skepticism and misinformation. This may be the biggest obstacle of all. Let's face it, most Americans haven't heard of Article 5, and when they do, it's often wrapped in fear or confusion. Some worry it could unravel our rights or be hijacked by special interests. But as we've noted here, that's not reality. This process is full of built-in safeguards. It requires agreement from 34 states to call the convention and 38 to ratify any proposal. No fringe idea is getting through that. What is needed is public education, outreach, town halls, conversations that show people what this movement is really about. Restoring power to the people, not taking it away. We have the truth. We have the tools. Now we need the courage to speak louder than the fear. So let's everyone informed. Let's get everyone involved, and let's make sure America knows this is our moment, and our Constitution gives us the power to use it. I'd state here that being on the planning board and being a realtor, I've seen a lot of things being taken away from the American people. And one of them is the 2/3 vote on zoning bylaws and things of that nature. And the taxes are going runaway on the people. The only way that we will actually in America be able to see our future is if we have fiscal responsibility, because our people cannot afford any more taxes. The insurances are doubling, the taxes are going up hundreds of dollars a month every year on Americans. Our future is slowly being tipped over by the waiter, and it cannot keep going. The people do not have any more money. We must act on fiscal responsibility now, or our nation will cease.
Thank you.
Hello, and
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing all this testimony. Are we having fun yet?
Yes.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. My name is Dave Wilder from Somerset, Massachusetts. The Article 5 Convention of States has already been fully vetted by officially Massachusetts in the Citizens Commission report in 2019. So I am speaking in support of H 3888. Patriotism is not blind loyalty. Patriotism is honest conversation. It is fierce debate, as you probably all know. It is love of country so deep that we are willing to confront what is broken and fix it peacefully, lawfully, and together. This is that moment. History will remember what you choose to do here. Will you dismiss this call, or will you rise to it and embrace its full potential? As you walk the halls of this sacred building, notice the faces of the portraits on the walls. Listen to what those who preceded you have said and what would be saying to you today. Likewise, ignore the utterances of those detractors of democracy and their ill-considered logic. The fear they spew isn't fit for consideration. Our Constitution was built for moments like this, and we sincerely believe so will you. We, supporters of an Article 5 convention, don't come in anger. We come in belief. Belief in the brilliance of our founders, belief in the necessity of action, belief in you as stewards of the very process the founders designed. We also believe in the wisdom, necessity, and process laid out by our founders. Your support of H 3888 represents a critical step toward reclaiming the promise of limited government, government that is truly by, of, and for we, the people. This is the moment to reaffirm what President-elect Kennedy called to mind in this very building in January 1961. Quote, "Concerning matters essential to self-government and orderly liberty, Massachusetts is a model to all and serves as a beacon for our sister states." Unquote. Supporters of an Article 5 Convention of States have faith that you possess the judgment and integrity to let the beacon shine once again, guiding us through the difficult conversation that must take place to protect and advance the fundamental principles we have long cherished, nurtured, and advanced right here in Massachusetts. With your support for H 3888, you can fulfill the sacred role the founders envisioned for you, those who, like you, were once members of their state legislatures. You now stand at the crossroads, ready to defend the Constitution with the current federal government. No longer a servant to the people, but an overreaching power. Exceeds its rightful limits and becomes a force of tyranny. This is your moment to lead. Just as the great leaders of this Commonwealth have done for centuries, you now have the opportunity to declare with unwavering resolve that the Constitution is not and will never be a dead letter. Thank you for your time, for your invaluable wisdom, and for your steadfast dedication to the future good of our Commonwealth, our nation, and we, the American people. May God bless America and this Commonwealth. It is my fervent hope that you will give voice to your constituents and actively support H 3888. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Yes, for the senator.
So, a couple questions, I'm only interjecting now because I think that the panel has completed.
Correct. Yes.
All right. So, a couple questions that I have right now is how long has Convention of States been promoting going to conventions?
I believe 12, 13 years.
So through multiple administrations on the federal level?
Certainly.
And as far as educating the general public, what is the plan to educate the general public? And we're talking about the everyday voter that is going to be faced with witnessing the Convention of States. if it were to go forward?
We try to hold meetings, we hold petition signings, and we have a lot of materials that we have online as well. I don't get paid. I don't have a big budget to do this. I do this because of love of country. And the 2.5 million other members of Convention of State Action are doing the same thing.
And then, and finally, is it possible that nothing comes out of the convention?
Certainly. The Convention of States is simply a discussion. All it does is propose amendments. It's, when you have Thanksgiving and sit around and talk about a topic, that's all it is. And everybody goes home. And the only thing that changes if a proposal is made in the convention and then is ratified by 38 states. So it's a high bar, and it's supposed to be a high bar. So the convention is a discussion, the outcome of which will be ideas, proposals for amendments. And we, the people, will decide what to accept or not.
So we've had 27 amendments that have been ratified. Have there been, so the Equal Rights Amendment, did that ever get ratified?
Has not.
How long has that been, have states been voting on that?
I'm not sure. I think the only reason, and some other people might help me with this one, I believe the only reason that was not ratified is because the original resolution had a deadline to it. And I believe if we reintroduce that now, that would probably be approved. But since there was a deadline to that particular action, it died before it got the required 38 votes.
Something like that could be reintroduced in the Convention of States.
Not in this particular convention that we're proposing, but a convention. With the committee, thank you. With the committee's indulgence, Representative Turco presented some ideas. Would we have a chance to address those, or is that not appropriate?
Yeah, if you give us some written testimony, you know what I mean?
Understood.
On that, we'd be grateful.
All right, thank you so much.
There's plenty more to testify after you.
Yep.
Okay?
Appreciate your time, sir.
So thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
We have Jeff Foster. And it's a panel, and Nancy, is Nancy here?
Chair McGonigal.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Vice Chair Rusch, honorable members of the committee. What a busy day at the State House today, but we are really proud to be here meeting with all of you on this really important subject. My name is Jeff Foster. I'm the Executive Director of Common Cause Massachusetts, and I'm here today on behalf of our nearly 20,000 members all across the Commonwealth. I'm here specifically in support of H 4692 and S 2684. Thanks to the leadership of House Assistant Majority Leader Peisch and Senate Majority Leader Cream, these joint resolutions would rescind all previous Article 5 convention applications. We also appreciate Rep. Sabadosa's support, who filed a separate bill. Under Article 5 of the Constitution, a convention can be called when 2/3 of states, that's 34 in total, petition. Such a convention has never been called before since the adoption of the Constitution, and for good reason. There are no clear rules, there are no agreed upon procedures, and no way to limit what amendments could be proposed once the convention is opened. It would open up our Constitution to unpredictable and potentially dangerous changes. Right now, well-funded groups like ALEC and the now famous Heritage Foundation are pushing for an Article 5 convention. They claim that it could be limited to issues like a balanced budget or term limits. But again, in reality, there's no legal way to enforce those limits. Delegates could propose sweeping changes on voting rights, civil liberties, and other things enshrined in the Constitution that we hold dear. These groups are also trying a new math out, where they're trying to count to the 34-state threshold. In a recent lawsuit mentioned earlier by Leader Cream and Leader Peisch, McCall v. Pelosi in Texas, which was dismissed on procedural grounds, claimed that by combining every Article 5 resolution ever passed, regardless of its age or its topic, that they've already met the 34-state threshold. That lawsuit included at least 9 active Massachusetts resolutions that exist between the 1930s and the 1970s on things like overturning prohibition, banning abortion, limiting school funding. All of these remain active right now. Meanwhile, on the record, far-right strategists like Steve Bannon, who support such a convention, are looking for ways, as we speak, to circumvent the 22nd Amendment to try to get his preferred presidential candidate a third term. We see Convention of States co-founder Mark Meckler openly on the record discuss using a convention to, and I quote, reverse 115 years of progressivism. Governor Ron DeSantis, just this summer on Fox News, publicly urged Elon Musk to put the weight of his purse behind a grassroots effort at the state level for a convention. What was once a fringe idea has become a well-financed and organized campaign to rewrite the Constitution for partisan ends. By passing H 4692 and S 2684, Massachusetts would be the decisive 17th state to have a zero balance on its applications to Congress. This very body, this very committee, has the means to make sure that if there's any effort to screw with the math, to try to call a convention, that it won't be in the name of Massachusetts, and that math will be stopped short at 33 states. For these reasons and many more, we're going to submit to you all in written testimony. We respectfully ask that you please give a favorable report to these rescission resolutions. Again, if there's any effort to subvert the Constitution for partisan gain right now, it can't be in our name. We thank you for holding today's hearing. We also would as enthusiastically ask this committee to give unfavorable reports to all the pending possible new resolutions that are before this committee. But again, our top priority is we ask you to give a quick favorable report to the Peisch-Cream rescission resolutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman McConnell, Vice Chair Rush, and members of the committee. I'm Nancy Brumbach. I'm a legislative specialist with the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. The League of Women Voters strongly opposes any effort to call for a constitutional convention under Article 5 of the Constitution, unless and until specific conditions governing such a convention are in place. We therefore support this joint resolution to rescind all previous Massachusetts resolutions calling for a constitutional convention, and we thank Leaders Cream and Peisch for introducing it. The League's position is that any effort to call for a convention before Congress passes legislation on both the composition of such a convention and the rules governing its actions is both irresponsible and dangerous. Former Supreme Court Chief Justice Warren Burger once described the current lack of laws governing a convention. Quote, "There is no way to effectively limit or muzzle the actions of a constitutional convention. The convention could make its own rules and set its own agenda. Congress might try to limit the convention to one amendment or one issue, but there's no way to be sure that the convention would obey. After a convention is convened, it will be too late to stop the convention if we don't like its agenda." End quote. Consider a few of the things we don't know about any constitutional convention. How many delegates? How would they be selected? Would they be elected? Would they be appointed? By whom? Would the delegates be selected by state or by population? Would each state have one vote? Would each delegate have one vote? How many votes would be needed to pass an amendment? Could a convention be limited to specific topics? Or could delegates take up any topic they want? Must all a convention's actions be conducted openly in public view? We don't know any answers to those questions. Given that huge amount of uncertainty, the Massachusetts League and our 44 local leagues across the state urge this committee to immediately and favorably report out the resolutions rescinding previous Article 5 convention applications. We also urge you to reject all new bills before you that call for such a convention to amend the Constitution, so we don't put Massachusetts back onto the list of states with such resolutions. Right now, the only safe way to amend the Constitution, given the lack of rules for a convention, is for Congress to pass the amendment and the states to ratify it, the way all amendments to date have been passed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair McGonigal, Vice Chair Rush, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Gavi Wolf, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the ACLU of Massachusetts in strong support of these resolutions rescinding previous Article 5 convention applications. I want to begin by thanking Leaders Peisch and Cream. By bringing this joint resolution forward, they are making a clear statement. Massachusetts will not be party to haphazardly tinkering with and undermining the United States Constitution. The ACLU opposes the calling of any constitutional convention when it will result in weakening civil liberties. And in the absence of strict standards for how such a convention is governed, and I kind of feel like we should just, quote the Warren Burger and mic drop there. I mean, he said it all. But in the absence of strict standards for how a convention is governed, there would be a grave risk that even under ordinary political circumstances that we would be weakening civil liberties. But under the current political climate, that outcome is rather inevitable. It's no secret that the Constitution is under attack. And you have heard from colleagues that radical right-wing operatives believe that long-forgotten Article 5 applications from Massachusetts should be counted toward the threshold to call a constitutional convention. Never mind that those decades-old Article 5 applications don't reflect the state's contemporary values or political will. Never mind that they were limited in purpose and scope. Never mind that many of them have been mooted by intervening changes in the law. Folks who support the idea of infinite executive power have shown their willingness time and again to rewrite, manipulate, and set fire to common sense legal standards. And the existence of these old Article 5 applications from Massachusetts is the match they need to light a bonfire. We need a strong United States Constitution now more than ever. It's our greatest bulwark against authoritarianism, and it should not be toyed with. However remote the possibility that the Commonwealth's old Article 5 applications would be resurrected, zombie-like, in service of efforts to weaken civil liberties and the rule of law, you can ensure that that never happens. And we urge you in the strongest terms to pass these joint resolutions as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Representative Gaskin.
My question to you, ma'am. You spoke about the League of Women Voters and engaged in the questions that you had about the structure of the Convention of States and the articles, things like that. Have you guys engaged with any of the groups to try to flesh any of that out and come up with something that everybody can work with?
Not that I know of. I don't know everything the National League is doing, and that's where it would be done at the national level.
Okay.
But I think we basically said it's up to Congress to draw up those laws, to decide how to set the framework.
But the idea is to remove Congress from the process. Why would Congress be involved?
Because the only way you could have the regulations governing it would for it to be law. That's the only way it could be enforced.
But it's already there.
The only law says that you can have one. It doesn't say how many delegates or how they would be chosen.
But again, isn't this where people from on both sides of the aisle should start to engage and try to come up with?
It would be ideal if Congress.
Because there is a growing faction to move forward with this wouldn't it be incumbent on all sides to come together and to say, look, if it comes down to this and the other states decide to join in on this, let's make sure that we all have some input.
I think that would be the case, that Congress, as a body,
opposed to just-
bipartisanly, would have to come
As
up
opposed
with,
to just rejecting everything.
would have to come up with ways to do it. I mean, since the Constitution allows it, it behooves Congress to come up with the way it's going to be done.
Okay, but we're here together.
Representative,
we're here
Representative, if I
together
may.
today, and you guys can get together right now and start to influence and to start down that path. It's got to start somewhere. Why not start today?
Go ahead, but Representative, this is not a debate here, you know what I mean? And if there's questions, I think you can ask them,
Right,
for a further conversation on it. But Jeff, if you'd like to have a word.
Yeah, thank you, Rep. Appreciate the questions. We'd be happy to follow up with you afterwards as well and talk through this more. What came out of the McCall v. Pelosi lawsuit in federal court in Texas was a dismissal, again, not on the merits, but what the court cited, the federal court cited, was what's called the political question. And what the court ruled in that decision was that this is a question that needs to be answered by the legislative body in Congress. And so while it might be a good idea in a sense for all the different stakeholders to come together on the sidewalk and draw up rules for street hockey, it's not something we're willing to take the risk on when it comes to our Constitution. Well, happy to talk to you more after the hearing about other dynamics at the national level as well. I just wanted to mention the lawsuit.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Excuse for the customary thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Jamie Watson. Jamie Watson here?
It might be online.
Okay. Jamie, you online?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm Claire Tagluni. I'm also from Reproductive Equity Now, actually going to be the only testimony on behalf of Reproductive Equity Now. Jamie's unavailable, if that's okay.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairman McGonigal, Vice Chair Rush, members of the committee.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify virtually with you all this afternoon on behalf of Reproductive Equity Now in support of H 4692 and S 2684 resolutions rescinding previous Article 5 convention applications. Massachusetts has continued to be a beacon for access to reproductive health care from the passage of the Roe Act to codify abortion rights into the laws of our Commonwealth, to enacting best-in-the-nation shield laws to protect patients and providers seeking or providing reproductive and gender-affirming health care. And despite the strong commitment of the legislature to not only protect but expand access to abortion, as you have heard this afternoon, we have an active resolution on file with Congress that would seek to constitutionally ban abortion nationwide. This resolution, which was filed in 1977, is not only out of step with the values today of Bay Staters and the commitments of this legislature, which has time and again affirmed the values of reproductive freedom and of bodily autonomy, but also endangers the entire nation in terms of accessing care. And so rescinding this active resolution will ensure that our Commonwealth does not remain tied to an old anti-abortion agenda that no longer reflects who we are. We are also concerned, as you have heard witnesses just before me speak to, with the dangers posed by an Article 5 constitutional convention. Once called and with no mechanism to define its scope, this convention could open the entire U.S. Constitution to amendment from voting rights to reproductive rights. And we know this isn't a far-fetched possibility. Anti-abortion extremists are already actively seeking to ban abortion nationally by any means, including using Article 5 of the Constitution. In 2022, Americans United for Life introduced what they've called an abortion abolition amendment, which they hope will become the 28th Amendment via an Article 5 convention. So it's very alarming that Massachusetts has an active resolution on file that could be used to support something that is now deeply unaligned with our Commonwealth's values. Put simply, I think we can all agree that rescinding these resolutions is an imperative to protect our rights and to protect our Commonwealth's values. So I strongly urge the committee to offer these resolutions a favorable report in order to make sure that Massachusetts doesn't contribute to any efforts that could destabilize our Constitution. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Excuse the customary thanks. We have Chris Lynch here, Chrissy Lynch. Jim, good. No?
Good afternoon. Chair McGonigal and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Chrissy Lynch. I proudly serve as the president of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, which represents nearly 500,000 union members from over 800 local unions across the state. For generations, organized labor has fought to secure the most basic rights: the right to bargain collectively, to earn fair wages, to work in safe conditions, to have a voice in the job. These rights weren't handed to us. They were won through years of struggle and sacrifice, often with workers' lives and their limbs. And there's always more work to do. We commit ourselves to that every Labor Day. But today, those hard-won protections are at risk, partly due to the push for an Article 5 constitutional convention. Let's be clear, once a constitutional convention is called, there are no rules limiting what could be changed. We've already heard that from panelists today. Everything, from the rights of workers to the empowerment of government, would be on the table. The very foundation of our labor laws, the Commerce Clause that supports the Fair Labor Standards Act, the National Labor Relations Act, and countless other protections could be rewritten or stripped away entirely. We can't afford to gamble with the constitutional bedrock that guarantees fair pay, safe workplaces. We already know that the right-wing corporate control of our government is aggressively ramming through its pro-billionaire agenda. We need to identify every way possible to roll them back from the rights, from rolling back the rights that we've all won over generations. That's why I'm here to support resolutions rescinding previous Article 5 convention applications, H 4692, filed by Leader Peisch, and S 2648, filed by Leader Cream, and urge you to protect working families by rejecting any call for a new federal constitutional convention, which would literally open up our Constitution for attack from the same wrecking ball they've already taken to the rest of our federal government. A runaway convention would give them the ultimate chance to rewrite the rules that make it even harder for the working class to get by, to lock in corporate power, and to lock working class people out of our democracy even further. One of their top goals is the so-called balanced budget amendment. It sounds reasonable on the surface, but in practice, it would force even more cuts to our public services, our infrastructure, our education, our healthcare, our Social Security. The labor movement has always stood for strengthening democracy, not undermining it. We believe that every worker deserves a voice and that our Constitution should reflect the will of the people, the will of the working class, not the will of the billionaire class who is behind this push if you peel back all the layers. A constitutional convention with no democratic safeguards and no democratic accountability would be devastating to our state. These resolutions are an act of defense of democracy, defense of workers' rights, defense of the freedoms that our brave veterans fought to secure. In Massachusetts, another way that we can play defense against the Trump regime is by rescinding our state's past applications for a convention and saying clearly we won't risk our convention, our labor laws, or our civil liberties for a dangerous experiment. On behalf of working families across the state, I urge you to support H 4692 and S 2648. Thank you for your consideration, your public services, and Rep. Kearney, Senator Rusch, and all the veterans of the committee. I thank you very much for your service to our country. And I'll give it over to Jim from AFSCME.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Jim Durkin, I'm the legislative director for AFSCME, Council 93. We represent about 36,000 public service workers here in northern New England. And look, a lot of good information's come out today. I'm going to try to summarize my written remarks. Look, simply put, at a time when the current administration in Washington, D.C. is openly and actively testing the boundaries of our nation's Constitution, and in some cases, ignoring clear limitations placed on the executive branch, we simply cannot risk providing this administration and its allies in state legislatures across the nation with a formal process to permanently codify any part of what we view to be a reckless and harmful agenda. We fear an Article 5 convention could open the door to a radical rewrite of our Constitution that could permanently and irrevocably change the course of our nation. Possibilities are both frightening and virtually unlimited. Should a convention become a reality, everything from collective bargaining rights to marriage equality could, and we believe would, be on the table for elimination. Other very real possibilities include the elimination of term limits for president, restrictions on our free press, and the drastic curbing of individual free speech rights, especially for those who are critical of the current administration's agenda. We also fear attempts to limit or reduce the power of the legislative and judicial branches of government, thereby creating an unchecked authoritarian executive branch that would be more akin to the type of government that led to our Declaration of Independence and led millions to seek safe harbor here over the past 250 years. Other risks or eliminating the ability of the federal government to address important environmental issues. Look, indeed, there's no clear guidelines or limitations on what delegates could propose. In closing, for those who may publicly or privately view these concerns as paranoid alarmism or ghost stories, as someone had said earlier, I would suggest they consider the following questions. Did you ever imagine that our Supreme Court would give our president viewed as necessary to perform his duties? Did you ever envision an America where people could be snatched off the streets by unknown mass law enforcement officers and shipped off to prisons in foreign countries without due process? Prior to these current times, have you ever witnessed a president openly direct his attorney general to prosecute individuals he viewed as his critics and enemies, while simultaneously declaring these individuals were guilty before they even appeared in court? Do you recall at any time a president who was as openly hostile and threatening to members of the media as our current president? We believe anyone who ponders these questions will arrive at the same conclusion as AFSCME Council 93 and the many other proponents of this joint resolution, which is we must join the growing list of states that have passed similar resolutions over the past 4 years. Thank you for your consideration. I will do my best to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Excuse the customary thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have, I hope I get this one right, Kit Jane testifying virtually. Kit, are you there? Yep, we'll move on. Just bear with us, we're trying to go through the Convention of States. Mark Meckler? Mark, are you online?
I am here.
Good afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Welcome to the
Chairman,
committee.
honorable member. Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to come in by video today. A quick aside, half of my family is from a little town in Massachusetts, so I feel like I'm an honorary member of the Commonwealth. Everybody lives in Millis or outside Millis, so we consider that a home away from home. It's an important state in so many ways. It is the birthplace of liberty, and what we're talking about is one of the things that the framers gave us to push back against an out-of-control federal government. From my perspective as the president of Convention of States, the organization moving this forward nationwide, this is the single most nonpartisan thing in American politics today. I've been amazed during this hearing to sit here and hear your fellow citizens in the room there called radical, far right, outrageous, all kinds of name calling against our fellow citizens, people who just believe that the federal government should live within its means, that people shouldn't serve in Washington, D.C. for 40 or 50 years on the people's dime. People who believe things that the vast majority of Americans believe. By the way, term limits an 85% issue. Balanced budget an 85% issue. These are not radical ideas. These are not fringe ideas. These are not far right or outrageous ideas. And I have to admit, having traveled all over the country, I've been in 49 states, in this legislature, from the witnesses here, I've heard more attacks on fellow citizens than I've ever heard anywhere else. The people who are in this room of good faith because they're worried about the state of our country. And they understand this process far better than some who have testified today. We had one testify, a professor said that limiting the Supreme Court to 9 would be outside the scope of this convention, when the convention actually calls for limiting the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the federal government. The federal government has the power to appoint, at this point, as many Supreme Court justices as Congress would deem. So that would be a limitation on the power of the federal government. We had League of Women Voters testify that Congress has the authority to write laws governing Article 5. That's a misunderstanding of the Constitution. The Constitution itself sets out Article 5. Congress has no power to limit that without the ability to call another convention and propose an amendment limiting it. So there's so much confusion around what's being talked about here today. It's very simple. This process is a process intended to benefit both parties because it has nothing to do with parties. It's a process that is intended to take power away from the federal government and return it to you in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, the Democrats dominate the legislature, and that means to take power away from a sitting Republican president, power away from a Republican Congress, power away from a court that leans to the right based on its originalist interpretations, and return that power to the people of Massachusetts. I say this as a conservative. I don't want to hide what I am as a conservative Republican. But I think that you in the Massachusetts legislature, in the majority, that Democrats should have more power, not less power. And I can tell you, whether it is Democrats in power in Washington, D.C., or Republicans in power in Washington, D.C., that I and the Convention of States are in favor of taking the power away from D.C. and returning it to the people. So I urge you to support House 3888. And I also want to say, we are not in support of all this aggregation that people want to talk about, applications that don't match being added together. We have nothing to do with that. And this is one place I would agree with all the organizations testifying against it. We don't agree that you can aggregate or put together all these applications that are not the same. So I want to register my support. I'm on the same side as them for not aggregating dissimilar pieces of resolutions all across the country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Elizabeth Mitchell. Elizabeth here or virtually? Elizabeth?
I'm here. I'm coming off mute, sorry, but I'm testifying in favor of DC statehood, so I'm not part of this panel. Do you want me to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Callanan Mitchell, and I'd like to start by thanking this committee for hosting this hearing and allowing me, a fifth-generation Washingtonian, to have a voice here. As I'm sure this committee is aware, there is something especially tragic about the fact that my friends, family, and neighbors all live in the shadow of power, but rarely feel its light.
Welcome back, COS supporters and COS activists. You've been watching a hearing of the Massachusetts Joint Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs on our COS action resolution, which is titled H3838. So they were also considering in this hearing several other bills and resolutions. Some of them had to do with Article 5. Others did not. That last person that was just testifying, that was, I believe, not something related to Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. But there were several bills that were discussed that were about Article 5, including our Convention of States resolution. So we're going to have Haley Shaw, the regional director of Massachusetts, come on here in just a few minutes to interview and just get her recap, get her thoughts on what she saw in this hearing. I want to go first, though, and just recap some of the things that I saw. I want to start with our grassroots. I think that's one of the best places to start when doing a recap and kind of giving some reaction on what I saw. And boy, I've seen hearings from all across the country, and Massachusetts is right up there with the top. These grassroots activists were just incredible. I wanted to read just a few thoughts that I had, some characteristics that came to mind when I was watching them offer testimony. So they were educated, they were ready, they were informed, respectful, they were disciplined. And you know what they also brought? They brought personal stories to their testimony. They brought their own personal experience to their testimony. Several of these activists, they have jobs, they have businesses that they run, they're entrepreneurs. They brought all of that into their testimony. And moreover, they were all concerned citizens. I'll highlight the fact that every single person that testified outside of Mark Meckler, they are not paid activists. They're not paid lobbyists. They are volunteers with Convention of States Action, and they care deeply about what's happening in their state and what's happening nationally. They see the rising debt, $38 trillion. They see the abuses of power happening at Washington. They see the centralization of power in DC. They see the fact that career politicians are the ones that run that town, and they want to do something about it. They want to do something about it in their district, in their town. They want to call an Article 5 convention of the states to put limitations on an abusive federal government. So those are just some of the things that I saw. They were obviously there, ready to talk about why they support this movement and why they are putting their time, their money, and their talent into calling the first ever Article 5 convention. Now I want to go over to the other side of the coin, the other part of the hearing that we saw there, because there was the grassroots activists of Massachusetts who were all part of the Commonwealth. And then there was a bunch of lobbyist organizations with no volunteers behind them, no activists behind them, no citizens behind them, just big money lobbyist organizations, just some of them to name a few. There was a few that I recognized. There was other ones I had never heard of before, but Common Cause, they're always Convention of States lives in Common Cause's mind rent-free. They're always showing up whenever we have a hearing to testify against us. And of course, they always say the same long dragged out myths about Convention of States and Article 5. They talk about the runaway convention. They talk about how we're going to lose all our rights. We're going to have a brand new constitution rewritten, all of that stuff. We also saw the League of Women Voters show up. We saw the ACLU. There was AFL-CIO, AFSCME, which those are our labor unions, I believe. Anyway, they all came mostly to talk about some of the outstanding Article 5 applications that are out there that were passed in the 1930s and so on, because there's been lots of Article 5 applications that have been passed in history. And they have this idea that Convention of States wants to cobble together Article 5 applications that don't aggregate with one another to try and get to a convention, to kind of almost trick the American people into getting to a convention faster. Well, Mark Meckler, in his outstanding testimony, he dispelled that. At the very end of his testimony, he said that Convention of States wholeheartedly does not endorse this idea of cobbling together Article 5 applications with one another to try and get to a convention faster with topics that are not related to each other. But still, it doesn't matter. These organizations, these Soros-funded organizations that have big money that are against common sense solutions, they're out there, they're trying to pigeonhole us with these other organizations that want to cobble Article 5 applications together. And I think Mark did a fantastic job in dispelling that lie that they were trying to allege against us. So in just a minute or so, we're going to have Haley join us. I have two quotes that I want to share before she comes on.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here, Haley. Okay, cool. Haley,
I don't want to interrupt you.
No. I'll get to those quotes with you in just a minute, because there were two activists that are in your state that really caught my eye on what they said. Just great branding, great marketing. Before we get to that, you are the regional director of Massachusetts, and you are also the Northeast Patriots region is where you oversee. Just tell us a little bit about what you saw in the testimony today, favorite quotes, moments, and then I'll come back with what I heard.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the grassroots here in Massachusetts just did an unbelievable job. They have been working on this hearing, or they're practicing their testimony for months. We never really know when exactly they're going to call us. So they've been working on this on Zoom calls, weekly for months, just to practice this testimony. I also just have to say that, we brought citizens, of Massachusetts here today, and everyone against us was part of, large lobbying groups. So that just says a lot. It was we, the people here, were representing Massachusetts. And I just have to say the team just knocked it out of the park. They did a fabulous job with their testimony. And as you mentioned earlier, these are just regular people. And a lot of them, used vacation days and came here to sit and tell this committee how they really feel. And I think they just did it wonderfully and eloquently. And you can't walk out of that not understanding their position and how they feel. So this group, they've done an amazing job. We've passed out of this committee twice, and I think that shows because a lot of bigger people that we were not planning for showed up, and that was really unbelievable. And it felt like us against giants, and I think that we brought our hearts, and I think that really shows.
I love that. Citizen patriots of Massachusetts against big money lobbyists who are out to stop the American people from using this solution.
Absolutely.
I want to mention two quotes that I saw. Maybe you can just throw out a few others or just comment on them. There was one activist who said that not the opposition, but this idea of a runaway convention, it is a scary ghost story meant to frighten you and not inform you. I loved that.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great quote.
That was our state content writer, Jeff Myers. And Jeff was the writer behind most of this. He sort of does a whole, choreographed thing, and then this team comes in and they get to put little parts of their identity in there. But yeah, that was the mind of the wonderful Jeff Myers, who's the state content writer here.
Yeah, that's a great line. Well, he did an awesome job. I remember seeing his testimony and just thinking, wow, this is incredible. And there was another one there. I believe it was on the same panel. It was a lady. She was a real estate agent, I believe. She said, the only thing more dangerous than division is doing nothing at all. And
Absolutely.
I just thought that was just so, she was so right on that, because right now we are so divided, but we can't use division as a reason not to do something. This is
absolutely.
The solution.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, this is the time, there's never going to be a perfect time, right? And so this is the time now when there is so much division, you might as well come together and, use your words. And that's all a convention is just a sharing of ideas amongst 50 states. And that's what people just need to remember.
Right. So, hey, Haley, can you go into a little bit of like behind the scenes for our viewers today? What is the strategy that your team had, and is it going to get you out of committee, do you think?
Well, this was sort of a new panel of people for us on the committee this time around. Our sponsor, Steven Zaros, has been on this committee traditionally, and he's no longer on that. And then our sort of one of our go-tos behind the scenes, Senator Vilas, he's been deployed by the National Guard, so he's not here right now either. So truthfully, we had a brand new panel of people, but luckily we have a couple of supporters on there, which was great. One of them was asking questions, Representative Thurber, but really the goal was to just share the story of Convention of States while also, of Article 5, while also, dispelling a lot of the myths and the rumors and get that done ahead of time and within that story. As well as what I loved here too is, you can't deny that Massachusetts is a Democrat-controlled state. And so utilizing some quotes and utilizing some more Democrat politicians into this really shows that we are nonpartisan, and it's really just an American movement.
Right. And those lobbyists at the end, their whole argument was this is Trump backed, it's Republican backed, it's the Heritage Foundation, all these different, which we do have the support and endorsement from the Heritage Foundation, but they're trying to lump this in as a Republican takeover. Well, if it's a Republican takeover, why are we in a deep blue state? We are nonpartisan. We're operating in every single state in the United States, and we care about getting this resolution passed in every single state. If we can't get it passed in all 50, okay, we only need 34 to get there, but we are actively trying to get it passed in every single state.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Haley. Sorry.
No. What I think is interesting is, Massachusetts is such a, Democrat-controlled state. And it felt like the opposition was really afraid and fearful of us, which was sort of a new position for us to be in. I don't want to say we were blindsided, because we're always ready to answer the questions, but I wasn't ready for the amount of people that were coming in to talk in opposition of Article 5 today. Not here. And so, we sort of uncovered maybe they've shown their hand a little bit in a new way that we'll be prepared for in all of our other states that are similar to Massachusetts.
I think freedom has oppression on the run right now. We are
No
making
doubt.
gains. We are going further, pushing farther in this movement, and we are getting ground. So I think you hit it right there, Haley.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is Massachusetts in the process, and what's going to happen next? Do we have a vote? We don't have a vote today, do we?
We don't have a vote today. We were told that they have until January something to basically give us a vote, or they'll decide. So this has been typically done in, behind the doors executive session kind of a meeting. So we won't hear, it live. That we'll probably learn, when they pass certain bills. So hopefully they do pass it. We've had a ton of people also write in. We had a big campaign where we had people write the committee. So we've had a groundswell of citizens here in Massachusetts let the committee know that they want this to pass.
And quick question, a follow-up question to that. Do we have to the end of the year, or is this going to carry over to the next year?
It's going to carry over. So
Carry
it'll carry over. We just filed this one in January, so it's a 2-year session. So they're not going to vote. We won't get a vote from this committee until early January.
Okay.
And then
okay.
from there, with luck, we pass and it goes to the floor. And that's always been a challenge for us. But hey, one step at a time.
It's such an inspiration, though, to see the movement that we have in a blue state. And again, it goes back to us being nonpartisan. I think so many legislators see that they're just not the lies from big lobbyist organizations like Common Cause and the League of Women Voters and all of those other organizations. They're not sticking because they see the activists who are showing up who are just average citizens. They're just average Joes. And they're there to voice their opinion and support this idea, this solution. And so I think that's part of it. And it's just incredible. It's incredible for the rest of the nation to see that we are making ground, that we are gaining ground.
Making ground. And it's possible in one of the bluest of blue states, Massachusetts, to get the people excited because, people are feeling the problems at the federal government. And that's what we're trying to at least try to address at a convention and just have conversation.
Yep. All right. So we have a few months till January, 2 months till January. Between now and then, what is the call to action? We have plenty of people who are going to be viewing this live. Several other people, I'm sure, will be viewing it, the recording. What is the call to action right now for the people in Massachusetts?
I mean, the first thing to do is if you haven't signed the petition, sign that petition. It's now or never. The next thing you can do is reach out to the committee that says the Veterans and Federal Affairs Committee and let them know you want them to pass this. This is H3 888. So that's what you can do. And if you happen to have your representative is on that committee, call them, email them, right? Just don't give up, calling and emailing and writing letters, but just let them know you want them to pass this and share it with your friends and family too.
Excellent call to action. Thank you, Haley. It's always a pleasure having you join us.
Yeah.
And I know you're incredibly proud of the Massachusetts team, and you're incredibly proud of all of your states and all of your activists in your region. We're going to have to have you come back in January when we get passed out of committee.
Absolutely.
We'll have to get your thoughts then.
Yeah.
Until then, thank you for all that you're doing, Haley.
Thanks, Andrew. And I just want to say thanks to Mark for coming in too as our cleanup hitter because he was able to battle some of those lobbyists. So appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. See you soon. Bye.
All right, Haley, take care. God bless. All right, you have been watching some recap on our Article 5 resolution. There was a hearing in Massachusetts, House Bill or H3888. There's not going to be a vote today. Haley Shaw, Regional Director of Massachusetts, she said that there will likely be a vote in January. So if you are not part of the Massachusetts team yet, if you have been tuning into Convention of States, you've been watching these hearings, and you haven't yet joined as a volunteer, you got to join. Use your time, use your talent, use whatever you have to help us get across the finish line in Massachusetts. Even if you have just a couple hours a week, you can bring your talent and you can help us to gain more ground in Massachusetts. That's the theme that I'm seeing right now. We are gaining ground in Massachusetts. We are gaining ground in many other states as well. if you are tuning in from another state, you're not in Massachusetts, this is a time to get engaged, get active, get engaged, get with your team. We need to take this to the next level. We have 15 more states to go until we get to the first ever Article 5 convention. We can't get there without activists like you. All right, well, we are going to go ahead and end this broadcast. We'll be back for the next hearing. We might have more action in this year, but we'll probably see you again in 2026. Until then, we have a country to save, so it's time for us to get back to work. Thanks for watching.